All right, well, welcome to the first ever Outdoor Highlife podcast. My name is Nick.
I'm KC.
Dylan.
So Dylan's on Zoom, and me and KC are here in our nice studio, and
Real nice, Clark. It's real nice.
in the corner by the edge of the kitchen table. But we've been talking about doing this podcast forever, and we finally just jumped in and decided to do it. Our mission with Outdoor Highlife is really pretty simple. It's just to share and conserve, share the people, share the places, share the, places we go, things we like to do, just share our passions with others and conserve those. And we figured a podcast was just another great way to share and conserve some of these places that we love to go and things that we love to do. So we decided we would just jump in and give it a shot here. But this is we decided to do our first podcast over something that we're all pretty passionate about, and that is DIY Western hunting, and specifically DIY non-resident Western hunting, because that's, we're from Oklahoma. And so we just kind of wanted to give y'all our perspective on hunting out west, coming from Oklahoma, predominantly a whitetail hunting state. So, yeah, we just decided that this would be, we'd kick this one off as our first podcast because, like I said, it's something that Dylan and KC, they're more well versed in the Western hunting than I am. I've been on a few hunts, but I love just spending time in the Rocky Mountains, whether that's fishing, hunting, whatever. But I think what we ought to do to start off with is just kind of share our experiences, how we got involved in just what drew us to the West, how we got started, and what we like to do, and if y'all want to go from there. But
Yeah, Dylan?
Yeah, the way I guess we got started, or I did, is, let's see, in 2006 or 2007, I've got two older brothers, one KC, one Jamie, and those two and about 5 other guys went out west to go first ever elk hunt. And at the time, I was a freshman or sophomore in college, so I wasn't able to go during that time. And so I kind of got my wheels rolling and hearing the stories that they brought back of what they saw, what they experienced during that time. Back then, going out west to hunt elk for us was one of those kind of like on a pedestal thing. Like, I didn't think it was actually achievable for what we do because we never experienced it, right? I just thought, you have to live in that area to go hunt these animals. And like you said, Nick, we're just used to whitetail and turkey and hogs and birds, and that's about it. So whenever they came back and hearing those stories, it kind of got the ball rolling for me. And I told myself, like, I'm going to go the next time, which then I was a senior in college. I just finished up pretty much, or was about to. And so I went with them, and, after the first year going through the process of getting the over-the-counter tag, going to Colorado, and realizing how simple that process is to obtain a tag and to just have the opportunity to go, it makes you stop and realize, like, fortunately, I was, 20 years old, 21 years old at that time. So, I got to start pretty young for me being non-res. But for others that, I guess, are looking into going out west, don't wait until that, because you think it's so hard to get it. Like, go do it. Go stinking do it. And after going the first year, it just happened to be the perfect time. We went third archery in September, and we've gone about what, Casey, probably 8 times since then, something like that.
Yeah, we've gone 7.
7, and since then we haven't touched the amount of action that was taking place. So that's what got me hooked. Whenever we went out there, it was third archery, and it was just a bugle fest. Peak rut, bulls everywhere, herds of elk everywhere. I mean, the herd that we were following was probably, I'd say, nothing short of 60 head of elk that were just going up and down public land. We just found them. And, growing up, we always coon hunted with dogs and everything since I was a little kid. And that was what I kind of referred to as like coon hunting on steroids. You go out there and at night, we were walking back to the truck or walking back to the camp, and you would just hear these bulls just bugling their heads off. So we just sat up against the mountain and just lit up by the stars in Colorado and just hearing them just sing all night long. And it was unreal. And there you talk about getting your blood flowing. And we had some opportunities. Had really, looking back, it's like, man, I wish we could experience that one more time, because I'm not saying we are highly experienced or anything like that. We learn a ton every time we go. But taking the knowledge we have currently with the technology that's come out since then, like Onyx, and seeing Randy Newberg and Born and Raised and Cam Haynes and all these guys hushing, and then going back to apply some of those things that we have learned since then, it would be just really a night and day difference for how we would have hunted those animals, because we were whitetail hunting them, we would see them, then we'd set up at a wallow or set up at a tree line and just kind of wait. We're scared to death to call. That's terrifying. It still is sometimes. You get out there and that first bugle, you're just like, okay, get ready to get ripped by your buddies that are with you, because here we go. We're going to scratch the surface, shake off the rust a little bit. But that's how we got started. I mean, I was so hooked that that was in 2008. And so I was a sophomore in college. And then in 2010, I graduated, and I was so ate up with the bug that I couldn't find a job because, it's like I had no experience in the degree that I had, or I was overqualified for some other positions. They were afraid I was going to leave once I did get a job with my degree. And so I ended up moving to Colorado and working for an outfitter for that 2010 season. And we lived in a tent. I lived in a tent for the whole season, 3.5 months. And we go take people in on mules and horseback and go up and down the mountains. And I had to fill that gap. It was just a bucket that I had to go do it. And I loved it. It was a great experience. And again, it just kind of continues to light my fire on wanting to go back and go hunting up there.
That's
what got me.
And it's a lot like, I'll never, ever forget when we're up there in the mountains and we hear our first bugle. It reminds you of your first Christmas, and you open your door to your room and you look around the corner and Santa Claus has brought you all these presents and you just light up. That's how it felt, and I still get the same feeling when I go every time we go and I hear that first bugle. I mean, it's kind of like Clark Griswold, whenever he finds the tree, he's just like, there it is, and it's just,
it is a good sound.
And it's, I mean, after you hear your first one, it's game on, and it's unbelievable up there.
It is. It's beautiful country. Yeah. I mean, I heard this saying one time, and I've always felt like it's kind of applied to my life. I was watching a fly fishing film or something, but it kind of applies to how I feel about the mountains. If you want your kids to grow up to be doctors or lawyers, don't take them fly fishing, because same could be applied to elk hunting, because that's all you can figure out. Sure. That's all you can think about is how can I do more of that? You know what I mean? And but I was introduced to it at an early age. My grandfather, he lived in Wyoming, and so we would take trips up there, starting young. And when I was about a teenager, he gave me a fly rod, and I saw a guy fly fishing in the Yellowstone River. And when I saw that, I mean, I can remember. I got the picture today.
Yeah.
If I can find it, I'll show it on screen here. But I mean, I saw that and I said, I've got to do that. And then just hearing the stories, my dad would go out west and go hunting every year, and just I would always be wondering while he's gone, man, I wonder if he's got anything.
Yeah.
And I would just always wait. Just like, man, I can't wait till I get older, because they'd come back with these cool stories.
All the stories.
And so since then, I've been fortunate enough to go, I haven't been elk hunting as many times as y'all have. I've been elk hunting just one time. That was quite the adventure.
That was quite the adventure.
I've been on one mule deer hunt and one bear hunt. And, but I like I've been fly fishing many a times throughout the West, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana. But for me, it's just, if I got a fly rod or a gun or a rifle, just something to get me out there chasing, because it's God's country. It's wild, and you can get out there and you can walk as far as you want to go.
Yeah, and and there's something about those mountains.
Yeah,
the mountains just
never got old, and
they never will. They'll never get old. They'll never get old.
But
I think it's just something that, growing up here, it becomes natural to where, we would go, Casey and I, we would go deer hunting before school. We would only sit in there stand for a few hours or so, and we'd have to leave whenever we didn't want to leave, or maybe a little late to class or something like that. But we'd go before school sometimes, and then we'd definitely go after school if we weren't playing baseball or football or something like that, or football. And man, I think just growing up and being able to have it in your backyard, if you will, and the same would go with somebody who is a resident of like Colorado or Wyoming or something like that, where, everybody's different. It's funny because when I worked up there in Colorado, I would talk to residents of the state that were working with me, and their dream hunt was to go sit in the deer stand and go hunt whitetail, And it could have been the same thing. It could have been like, his grandfather and his dad, they'd go to Kansas or Oklahoma, South Texas, and they'd go hunt these big whitetail, and just seeing how big these things are compared to a whitetail in Montana. It's just a different species and a different animal that you're not used to hunting. And the cool thing for us, or the cool thing for me anyway, that I enjoy is that, honestly, if elk weren't so vocal and just have that blaring bugle, that is what does it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like Casey nailed it. When we go up there, and I remember the first night of the elk hunt that I went to, which was his second elk hunt, but the first night that I went, we were on the behind the camp, and it was dark. We just got everything set up, and we're like, hey, we hear people bugle at night. We don't know why. People bugle at night. We have no idea what we're doing. So we're sitting on the back porch, and I've got the Primo's Terminator,
Oh, yeah.
And I still got it.
I do too. I still got mine.
Lit the bugle, and I heard one pop off, and I was like, I'm freaking hooked. Like that's it right there. Like that was made the trip, is that I bugled, and not that I was good, and I'm still terrible, but you could have just hollered in the back porch of that thing, and something would have piped off because they were just so into the rut.
And what I like about chasing these elk, they're amazing creatures, for one, but they're so big, and they can move through that dark timber and all the blowdowns. Complete silent. Silent, and it's just it's unbelievable. They're these big old horns on these things, and they're 700-800 pounds, and it's just, they're like ghosts, and it's the challenge. Of course, I love a big challenge, and going to hunt these is a challenge. Yeah, definitely a challenge.
And like Dylan said, just hearing that bugle, it just makes you. It just makes the hair stand.
It does.
On the back
It
of your
really
head.
does.
But my dad, he loves to hunt mule deer, and I find with a lot of and maybe this is just in my circle, but I find that a lot of course, over the years, the mule deer. And don't quote me on this, but just the way I understand it, the mule deer population or sizes have kind of diminished over the years. I think they may be coming back a little bit, but it seems like back in his day, that's what the guys were going after was the mule deer.
Yeah.
And people may have a different perspective on that, but
and I feel like elk hunting and you know, guys that are from Oklahoma and different states, non-residents, you know, that it really didn't pick up till 15 years ago.
yeah.
You know, 15, 17 years ago. And just, I feel like since then it's just really blown up, and there's a lot of non-residents that go to Colorado.
The thing about it is, you know, for us, it's one of those things to where it could have always been there, you know, always a big thing, but the social media platform is what has just blown it up.
True.
We just had DVDs. That was kind of the
visualized. It's like, oh my God, like you can actually go do this, and you don't have to have this big setup or extravagant. You know, it doesn't cost a whole lot of money to go do it for an over the counter. You know, I mean,
and that was our whole deal when we first started elk hunting. We're like, how much is this going to cost me? I can't afford that.
Right.
You know, and once we did our research and we go, and you're hooked.
And that's I don't know if that's a question y'all get a lot, but that's a question I get a lot is, you know, when I tell somebody, hey, yeah, I'm gonna go to Colorado or Wyoming, Montana, and I'm gonna go fly fishing or bear hunting or elk hunting or mule deer hunting, they're like, man, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
That's my dream trip
one
day. And
that's
I'm like,
on my bucket list.
I'm like, man, it shouldn't be your dream trip.
No.
I mean, we're very blessed to be able to do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful, but it's not one of those things that's, if you're just going to go DIY, you know, you need a tag and some gas money. Because, you know, the way we hunt, there's no grocery store, you're not going to be spending any money. You just need the gas money to get up there, a tag and something to hunt it, you know, with.
And your weapon.
And a weapon.
That's it.
Right. I mean, because I remember whenever I went up there by myself for a few days, just to kind of scout out, and it would have been no different if I was hunting during that time either, you know. But I mean, I drove my truck by myself, drove my truck to where we were going to hunt, and I took a sleeping bag, a bedroll, put it out in the back of my truck. And so when I got there, I had just like a whole pallet of water, some mountain houses and a jet bull, and some ramen noodles, and then like I just camped out in the back of my pickup, slept all night back there, woke up the next day, I had my backpack on. I just go hike of where we thought the elk would be. I mean, like I had footage of, you know, this is before season, right? But I mean, like I had footage of like, I'm within shooting range of these bulls. I mean, like I was glassing a ridge, and there was like 3 or 4 bulls that are in bachelor groups at the time, you know, and listening to them bugle. I mean, it's early August or something like that when I went, and I was like, I mean, if nothing would have changed, you know, I could have waited another 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, gone back up there with my bow and camped in the back of my truck. My tag cost $680, non-res tag, some gas money. I mean, you're talking $1,000, and I was there. That was it. You know, and I was able to go in there. I could have hunted. The only extra expense that you're going to have is if you process the meat or you taxidermy it up. You know, I mean, that's really it. But if you're going to go killing, you're going to fill your freezer up with all that meat, and it's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper, especially nowadays, than going to the Walmart or your farmer's grocery mart or something to purchase the amount of meat that you'll be able to obtain from shooting.
Well, number one, you're not even going to find elk meat here.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Number two,
it's like hamburger meat. I mean, it's so expensive.
Yeah, everything.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And you've done it yourself. You put in the work, and now it's all in the freezer, and it's going to feed your entire family the whole year.
And I bet it tastes a lot better when you've packed it out
and done all that work. It tastes a lot better. It does.
Well, because I mean, you shoot an elk, and you're taking this big animal down. You're coming home with probably like about, I don't know, 250 pounds of meat. I mean, really, you know, that's probably what it is. About 250, 270 pounds of meat that you're going to put in your freezer. And it's just, man, if you've got the equipment, I know it, like Casey and Nick, y'all both got some meat cutters and things like that you guys can do the whole meat processing yourselves, you know, and you don't have to go buy or pay somebody to do it. And I mean, you can make your jerky, you can make some dehydrated stuff, you can go ahead and sausage, whatever, burgers. And I mean, shoot, if you go up there and experience it, it's one thing. If you get one, that's why you're going, is to shoot one, to fill your tag up. But really, I mean, especially if you go with some buddies or your family going up there, I mean, that is the experience is so cool. That
It's just the hunt itself.
And and the hunt itself, and having expectations, like we're specifically talking about DIY, non-resident Western hunting. And I don't know what the actual statistics are of filling your tag. I don't know, 10% or something like that. I think that's what I've heard. I mean, it's not, like I said, my dad used to come back a lot of, like, dang, Dad, shoot anything up there? But, I didn't understand it until you get older and you're like, oh, okay, this is not, like hiring an outfitter. And there's nothing wrong with hiring an outfitter and nothing like that. But there's something about just, heading up there with some buddies and family or whatever and just, trying to figure it out yourself. Just like this bear hunt we went on last year. And that's another thing, an elk tag, what is an elk tag?
$680.
$680, and you can buy over the counter. I mean, like this year, we're just going up there buying an over the counter elk tag. You don't have to put in for any points or draw out or anything like that. Mule deer is a little different. It's a little harder to get a tag, but I think a mule deer is maybe like I can't remember.
Mule deer is 400.
400.
Yeah.
And then this last year, we had a blast hunting bears.
And how much is a bear tag?
$100.
Yeah.
$100. And you go up there, and I'll tell you what, I had a blast.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about bear hunting, but I learned. We saw some bears. We were getting on bears. Weather just got us in time. But my dad's actually up there right now bear hunting. I talked to him earlier today. He went up there, and he went to the spot that we saw him last year, and he'd spotted one. So I'm curious to see what they're getting into. Of course, it's 100 degrees up there right now from what he was telling me. But yeah, so you can go up there and, elk, mule deer, bear, pronghorn. There's a lot of and they're all unique in themselves as far as how you hunt them, but it's still every one of them's fun in their own right, and they all get you out there. And like I said, I've had memories that'll last a lifetime from all those hunts. You know what I mean?
100%, yeah.
But I would have to say elk. That's pretty fun hunt.
They're so fun to hunt. And it's not easy, especially when you're DIY over-the-counter tags, and it's not easy, but it's so much fun.
Main thing is don't feel intimidated by cost or lack of knowledge, because, like I said, there's a lot of resources out there that you can use to plan your first hunt. And I don't know if y'all want to talk about those.
Well,
some of those resources.
One of the best resources is, figure out what state you want to go to, and then just go to their Division of Wildlife. And, we love Colorado, and we know how to apply in Colorado. We've been up there several times, and we love Colorado, and Colorado's got a website, that you can get on, and they'll help you plan your hunt, from, what animal you want to choose to go hunt to where you want to go hunt, and pick what season you want to hunt them in, and with what weapon, and you can call them, and, Dylan's called them several times, and they're so helpful on the phone. But Colorado Division of Wildlife, if that's where you decide to go, they've got tons of resources just on their website that'll show you everything from they've got a cool map of the entire state of Colorado, and it's all the units, and they're numbered, and it shows you the closest town. Because I remember, we were printing them off, and I printed them, and I'm like, where do we want to go? And well, we want to go so and so, and I'm looking at the closest town, you know, and how do you get up there and this and that. And then, but I mean, they've got everything to get you going up there to hunt any kind of big game animal. It's right there on their website, you know. You can get a brochure, and the brochure has basically the same thing that the website has on it, you know.
And their biologists, or every time I've talked to them, you can just, there's a number, a contact.
Yeah.
Every time I've called them, they've been super helpful. I mean, just, hey, I want to hunt here. What do I need? And, you know, they've always been super helpful when I talk to them. So, but yeah, Colorado Division of Wildlife. That's probably maybe the first resource you could just get on their website. But there's tons of Go Hunt is, man.
Go Hunt is really, really cool. It breaks down. Matter of fact, I was on it today and I was looking at bear, you know, because we're really thinking about maybe going to shoot a bear next year or whenever. And you can click on the species you want to hunt. It'll give you every statistic that you can imagine, how the unit's like, how much public land is in that unit, you know, point you in the right directions, and tells you how many preference points you got to have for this unit. Is it over the counter tag? Is it, you know, they've got it broke down to where you can see if you've got to have 0 preference points or over the counter tags, or what's your percentage of drawing, you know, with say you had 5 points or whatever, and it breaks down every unit, every species, and it's an incredible tool.
Oh, it's amazing how they've evolved that site over there. I mean, just from the maps to the draw odds to just to everything. That's a super helpful something that we use quite a bit. So Colorado Division of Wildlife, Go Hunt, and I would say probably the biggest game changer over the last 10 years of hunting up there for me is OnX Maps.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you talk about a game changer.
And the cool thing about OnX Maps is not for just big game.
Yeah.
I mean, I used OnX Maps this year when I was out there baling hay to see how many hours it took me to do so many acres of hay, you know. And I mean, it tells you you're running 4 miles an hour and you've made so many laps, and it's an amazing tool. But we use it for deer hunting too.
Yeah.
You know, stand placements, you know, water holes, you know, I mean, trails. It has everything on that, and it's all at the palm of your hand on your phone.
I know y'all use it quite a bit, Dylan.
I mean, you're right. OnX Maps is what is, like you said, a game changer, because I mean, I use it every day. I mean, we'll go and we'll run cows and check cattle and stuff. And if we've got something in the neighbor's land or they're on our property or something like that, I can just go in there and see who the landowner is, the adjoining neighbor, and have their information on there. I can contact them, make sure that, like Casey said, if we're deer hunting, that, hey, whose property did this deer run on? Or if we've got something going on, we can make a phone call and know who's there, the boundary lines. I use it every time I go run. I mean, I don't have, you know, other things like a whoop or watch or something like that to be able to utilize all the time. So I always have my phone, so I just put OnX Maps and I put in there, say, start tracking now, and I just take off. And then I can look down and tell me how far I've gone and how long it took. And then, so I use it for everything.
And what's really cool, you know, about the OnX Maps, when it comes to public and private land, like, they're so spot on.
It is.
The line is so spot on. You know, like when me and Dylan was up elk hunting, I think it was his first time we went up there, you know, we were looking and we're like, man, I think the private land's up here another 20 yards and this and that, and it was a lot further than that. You know, a couple more years we went up there and we noticed that, hell, we could have been hunting another 200 yards in, because they're really, you know, because there's a lot of times there's no fences up there.
Yep.
You know, and where you're at, you know, depends on the map that you have and Onyx Maps is
It allows you to go places that you probably wouldn't have went before because you just
True.
weren't quite sure. But you can
Well,
do a lot of. I mean, on this mule deer hunt, I was kind of my strategy most of the time was to hunt the boundaries. To get back up in there and because those deer are smart. They're going to get on private, but maybe they'll mosey off on private and get. But it's just crazy because they don't have you don't have to fence your land. I mean, that's your responsibility as a hunter to know the public and the private. It doesn't
Right.
have to be fenced, no signs. It's your responsibility. But I remember one day we were glassing, and I mean, this is just wide open national forest, a big old chunk of national forest, and got to looking and on my maps, and I was sitting there glassing, and 400 yards in front of me was like a 20 to 50 acre plot of private land. Just, I mean, how
Yeah.
would you know? How would you know that that's, if there's no sign? I mean,
Yeah.
if you looked on the map beforehand, but just this little chunk of private just buried in this big mass of, public land. So
that's
it's
not fenced.
not fenced,
And that's a
So-
hefty fine, I
Yeah.
imagine.
well, and the thing about it is that it doesn't just change on what Onyx changed for me, especially going out west, was how much more of the hunting time I would take advantage of, right? First couple years we went, I mean, we were scared to death. I mean, you take one false step and you're going the completely different direction. We have some GPSs, but a GPS up there, we still take one. We take like a Garmin InReach, and it's nice. We mainly use the Garmin InReach just to reach back out to the wives and families back here to say, hey, we're good. Or if something goes on, they can contact us and we can get out of there if we need to or something like that. But the Onyx, the difference is the being able to look while you're out there when you save that map, and instead of having to bushwhack through who knows what, because the GPS, my GPS will not tell me. I'm sure there's others that probably have different layers you can look at the topos and things like that.
It points a
figure out
direction
where the
and it
weasel is
says home
But-
is this way,
Right. And so my Garmin was saying home is this way, but I was looking on the Onyx and it's like, hey, go around this way, or you can kind of figure a better, easier track, or hey, on the way back, we don't want to bushwhack, we want to follow this game trail. Where does it go? And then you can actually look on there and say, hey, if we follow this game trail for another half mile, then we could at least may run into something, and on top of that, be heading in the right direction we want to go. But we would go up there, and then almost prime time, you kind of packing up a little bit and trying to get back to where where the trail's at from where you're hunting at before it does get dark, because all you're going to have is a headlamp. But when it's dark up there, it's dark. And Onyx, I mean, now we'll sit there till dark 30 just to make sure we know where they're bedding at, and then we'll get up and get out of there. But yeah, man, Onyx is definitely probably the number one. It is the number one tool that we utilize when we go up there. And before, you go on there and you can bring it up on your computer now on the desktop version and really get a good sight. I mean, I was on here yesterday and I had Onyx on my phone looking at it, and I had Google Earth on the computer, and I'm just kind of looking and putting the boundary lines and just seeing, because there's some layers that one does that the other one doesn't do. And there's Gaia and there's topos and there's different layers and things like that people can utilize. But for us using Onyx, I mean, it's definitely pretty handy. But yeah, as far as going out west and stuff, figure out what species you want to hunt, and then look up to see what the population is and what state holds that certain type, if it's grizzly bear, if it's elk or whatever, and then call a division of wildlife. And like you said, Nick, you can ask them, say, hey, who's in that, the local biologist for this particular area, and they'll be able to help you out even more, on what areas green up faster than the other ones, or what valleys have more aspens or something like that, and they'll be able to tell you. And some of that stuff you take back to your Onyx maps or Google Earth, and then just kind of getting that much more detail as far as where you want to go and why you want to go to that particular area.
Yeah, and Colorado has what, 22 million acres of public land.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, tons and tons and tons of public land. There is so many places to go. And also going back to the Division of Wildlife, they've got a map. They've got a map source now up there that tells you everything about the unit and shows you an actual map of where it's located at and the terrain and all that. But to me, figure out what you want to hunt, whether it's elk or bear or antelope or whatever it is, and say it's elk, and say, well, I want to start looking at where I want to go elk hunting. And I'd be getting on Go Hunt, Colorado Division of Wildlife. I'd call them.
And we talk specifically about Colorado because that's just kind of
Yeah.
the place that we've always hunted, and it's kind of closer. But I mean, Wyoming,
Right.
Montana,
Yeah.
you know,
And because it's species, right? I mean, like if we were going to hunt grizzly bear, then Colorado would not be in my choice of where to go. You know, I particularly want to stay away from grizzly bears, so that's why I go to Colorado. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
but that is, but going back to like what led us to this, talking about Onyx, is that having the ability or the technology to utilize Onyx makes going out west that much easier.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right? Is that before we were going out there, it was kind of hairy for us flatlanders to go because, man, it's not just you can holler from the back 40 back home. You know, I mean, like you're camping for the night and then figuring out where you're at the next day. You know, and but having that now, it's that much more comforting to have in your back pocket, to where when you go out there, man, just go, get on X, do your research on kind of the layout of the land and where you want to be camping and hunting at from that property or from that location. And for elk hunting, pay your $680 and go. And honestly, I mean, for us we're going in a couple of weeks and to go elk hunting, and we've got 4 people going and 2 tags. And I'm not saying we're party hunting. I mean, 2 people have been taking the bows, the ones that have the tags, but it's that experience to go up there. And I would highly suggest that if you're thinking about doing it, because you know some buddies or know some guys that do it, just tag along the first year.
Yeah.
You don't have to get a tag. There's no pressure now. There's no money involved. You got to pay for gas money and go spend $100 at Walmart for some food that you can cook on a jet boil and go.
And the cool thing about
And then just kind of get a taste of it, figure out these.
yeah, and like this year,
Just take off.
when we go this year, we're going up there. There's 4 guys going. 2 of us got tags, and say we get really, really lucky, and we're tagged out on day 2 or 3, and it's an over-the-counter tag. We can get in the pickup. We can drive about 30 minutes, and we can buy another tag for whoever the other 2 guys, and go right back in there.
and that's and you get back there, and I mean, we're going back there a pretty good ways, and you shoot a big old elk. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Work.
nice to have 4 people to pack it out of there. I mean,
yes.
because if you're packing it by yourself, I mean, you're making at least, I mean, if you're a He-Man, 2 trips, but I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah, part 3 for sure. for
yeah,
me.
yeah.
yeah.
But if you're
But
four of
four,
you each
but
grab
4
a quarter
guys,
and-
4 guys is like the perfect
yeah.
amount to go if you do get a bull down, and you can pack him all out in one load, and it won't be too terribly heavy. It's going to be heavy, but you're still going to have a smile on your face when you're packing that sucker out too.
And it may not be your thing. So if you go out and you buy the license and you spend a bunch of money, and I mean, we've had experiences where, sometimes it's just not your thing.
Right.
Yes. And then sometimes you get out there and you're like, I've met some people that get out there and they're just like we are, like, I cannot wait to come back. And then some people went off the mountain as
quickly as they can.
as quickly as they can. So,
True.
It's just, that's a great way to just, if you got some buddies that are going, hop in the truck with them. And
I say this all the time when you're elk hunting. Of course, being in shape helps. But when you're a flatlander, you're from Oklahoma like we are, or just a flatlander in general. I don't care how tip-top shape you're in, you're going to suck air the first 3 days that you're there. But after the third day, you kind of get acclimated and you kind of get going. But it's and what's cool, I mean, we've learned, this will be my 8th trip, and we learn something every single year that we go. Every single year that we go. And just like last year, we were on our way back, and we hadn't left 10 minutes ago when Dylan's like, all right, next year, I ain't bringing this, or I need to bring this, you know, or we're not going here, we're going to go there, you know, already, you know, and already kind of.
And two is that we do all this research to figure out these spots we want to hunt. You know, it does not mean you're not going to be able to run into elk before you get there.
Right.
The first year that us three went, years ago, when we went up there, we hiked in 7 miles before we even thought about trying to hunt anything. 7 miles up, straight up, right? And we get up there and there's no water, there's no nothing. It's like, man, we had 70-pound packs like 10 years ago.
Do you remember, Dylan, what that guy said when we walked down to his camp? Remember, he flung the door open, and the first thing he said was, did y'all crazy you-know-what's come from that so-and-so trail? And I said, yes, sir, and we're in dire need of water. And he goes, there ain't no water up here. It was so dry, you know, so we had to walk 7 miles.
Yeah, we're like, how'd you get your water?
Yeah.
You know,
He goes,
like a bunch of goobers asking.
He said, I'm smart enough to get packed in on mules. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah, we had the.
Yeah. You know, and fortunately, he had packed in water on those mules, so we were able to fill up right there. But we knew that
we couldn't stay there.
We had to get down with what we had. So you had a 32-ounce Nalgene that we filled up, and that's pretty much all we had. And so, you know, we were coming back down that thing, and I mean, hell, that's harder on us than going up.
Oh, that was the most physically
70-pound packs.
And mentally tough
and
hunt.
What was stupid was that, you know, for us, and again, it's just a learning opportunity. It's still like right now, I mean, we're still talking about it and laughing about this trip that we had years and years ago that was not a successful hunt, right? But we did have one encounter, you know, and we had many experiences, good, bad, and ugly, that we had during that trip that we still talk about. And that's what it's all about for us, you know, is yes, we want to go out there and punch tag and notch it out. But man, if you do that, and you want to go up there and that's all you want to do, and you're going to be so mad at yourself if you come back home with a green tag. I mean, like, you know, there's different ways to look at it. You know, you got to go up there with the mindset of it's going to be tough, it's going to be fun, but it's going to be an adventure. And it's going to be different than something you've ever done before, or what you're used to down here.
Yeah, so we've talked about this all the time. It's 90% mental. It's like 90% mental.
Yeah.
When you go, because it is tough. But if you just go up there and say, you know what, I'm going to go up there and experience this, and I'm going to have a ball. You're going to have a ball, and you're going to be back the next year, and then the next year, and the next year, and
then shooting animals, just like the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But a lot of the funny memories and stories for me don't even involve shooting an animal. There's something that happened or
absolutely
something like that. So and anything that's hard, and the fact that it's challenging the way we kind of hunt. And it doesn't have to be that hard.
No.
So you know you can. It's not like you have to. You know, I mean, you can take your foiler and you don't necessarily have to hike a lot or anything like that. I mean, and you can still kill an animal, but just the way that we like to hunt, and we feel like it's, you know, as far as killing a more mature animal or, you know,
or just more opportunities.
More opportunities is, you know, putting a pack on and getting back there away from people, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
Right.
But that's just the way that we like to do it.
Look at as far as like what you focus on, you know, because you've got some people that are just excellent callers on not just calling, but knowing how to talk to the elk.
Yeah.
They're not going to have to go back as far as we do because they can bring those elk in that are more pressured elk that have experienced being hunted and things like that, that may not be as far off the road. They may be within 2 miles off the trail, you know, but because they see them or they know that they're there, or they see sign, there's a bunch of rubs and things like that. For us, we like to hear them talking to us. So we'll continue to kind of go back until we hear those bugles and then start trying to hunt the certain particular bull or something like that. But for some people, they can hunt those silent animals all day long. And I'm telling you, there's no telling how many elk that we have passed, not knowing it, just going to a location. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that mindset. And like you said, Nick, I mean, we enjoy taking the packs, going back there kind of divvy style and setting up camp in the backwoods and hunting from there, and then kind of following that route of where we think the elk are going to be. But we've also done it to where we have base camp at the truck. And so we're at the truck. We've got a big, you know, Cabela's a Lacnac tent, stove, heat. I mean, it's nice. It's comforting. It's nice, you know. But the only kicker on that is that for us, it was, you know, Onyx changed that a little bit because, like I said, you can come out at dark and it doesn't matter. But it's just that more miles on your feet or more miles or time on the horseback and
getting up early every morning just to get. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're getting up at 3:30 in the morning to feed the horses so we can be up there by the time the sun comes up.
And then when you leave Trailhead,
you watch Born and Raised. I don't even think Born and Raised gets up till 8 o'clock in the morning. But they're successful doing it.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own style of doing it. You know, like Randy Newberg. I mean, he's always got the green light and he's taking off and he's in there before the sun comes up and everything. But he's kind of got it like a base camp with his tent, and then he goes from there and hikes out 2 or 3 miles and hunts, and he comes back. Born and Raised, I mean, they're in the woods, they're in there, and they're following those elks. They're not far behind them or in front of them or something like that, so they have the opportunity where, you know, they can sleep a little bit longer, you know, or get a little bit more rest maybe or something like that. But the turn of that event is that once they do kill something, they may have to pack that sucker out 8 miles, you know, and we would be in the same kind of boat from where we're going to be going, but don't just think that, oh my gosh, you know, I've got to be in Cam Haines shape to be able to go do this thing. I mean, you know.
And you don't have to walk 5 miles to go find something.
No,
find elk.
No.
I mean, they're there, and like Dylan said, we've probably passed up tons of elk.
And a lot of it's just getting lucky. I mean, this is a big deal for, you know, a non-resident is you plan this. I mean, that week off of work is planned well in advance. And we all know when it comes to hunting, I mean, like around here when the whitetail rut's kicking off and the weather changes, you know, you can say, hey, I'm getting off work and I'm going to go hunt this area. Well, there you've got 1 week and you just don't know that's when you're going. And, you know, the weather could be like when we went bear hunting this last year, it was in September, this time of year. The first 3 days, it was 100 degrees, wildfires everywhere. The 4th day, it snowed 8 inches. You know, and that's just something that...
It's Colorado for you.
Yeah.
You know?
The year before that, we went in November mule deer hunting, thinking that it would be hoping for a little snow or a little colder and, you know, push those mule deer down. Well, we were out there in T-shirts.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, me and Dylan's been on several like that, you know, during bow season up there in northern Colorado, and it's 60 degrees and nice, and you look up and there's like a dark cloud coming, and Weather Channel says, you know, on the weather radio says, oh, we could get a couple inches of snow, and you wake up to a blizzard, you know, absolute blizzard. And you learn, you adapt, and you go and you learn, you know.
That's the only time you got, so you're like, let's figure something out.
Yeah.
And you could pack up and go home, but that wouldn't be that fun.
No, it wouldn't be that fun.
But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, there's a lot of resources out there. I mean, especially with YouTube. I mean, I know you guys watch a lot of the Western hunters out there, and they have some great channels that give great information. And like Dylan said, they all have maybe a little different style, but they're all successful in some way or another. But Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, check those out. I mean, you can learn a ton. I mean, this is pretty much. I mean, you could get a college degree from YouTube, I believe.
Oh, absolutely.
So I mean,
Yeah,
same thing with hunting. I mean, just
Yeah.
there's so much out there now, that so many resources on the interwebs that you could watch and help you out. So
Anybody want to share a funny story?
I think so. I think we should wrap this up, and y'all got any funny stories?
Dylan, you have any funny stories from one of our past hunts?
Probably my first hunt is the one that stands out to me, like, or my first hunt. We went out there, 7 guys, and we were staying in a little old cabin. This guy had about 700 acres private property right up to national forest. And we pretty much lucked out during that time to be able to stay in this cabin. I think at the time, Casey, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it was $250 a person for the whole week.
That's
like
correct.
That first year that we went. I mean, it was unreal. We were able to stay in the cabin. I mean, it was crazy. Since then, it's like quadrupled, so we don't go there anymore. But first year that we went up there, like I said, it was a rut fest. And for some reason, it was like the second day, and about the third day is when they really started bugling their heads off. But some guys went fishing that day, and they caught some fish. And they, of course, brought them back up there on the four-wheelers. Well, that evening went hunting, and I wasn't with this particular group. Casey was. He could probably speak to it a little bit better than I do. But basically, guys got done hunting, went back to the four-wheeler. When we went to the four-wheeler, we always carried these boxes in the back of our four-wheeler. We put the jackets, coats, wallets, keys, whatever, in the back of these four-wheelers. And they got back to the four-wheeler, and the latches were broken on one of their boxes. And so they were like, well, somebody's been in my box. Lid was open, so they opened the lid, or they looked inside, and it's like, the wallet's still here. Nobody stole anything, you know? And they went to the other four-wheeler, and the gas cap was broke off. And he looked on the side of it, and there was just claw marks on the side of that four-wheeler that held the fish on. And so at that moment, I guess Casey all looked at each other and thought, oh, crap.
Oh, yeah, it was all like, we were just like, man, who come to get in our four-wheelers? You know, I mean, we're from Oklahoma. People steal stuff around here. You know, up in Colorado, you don't expect a bear to get on your four-wheeler. And I was the only four-wheeler that wasn't touched. There was 3 of them sitting there, and both of them kind of got mauled by the four-wheeler. And
the funny thing is that once they got back, and out of the 7, there's a few, or one or a few that aren't as outdoorsy, I guess you'd say, as others, right? And a little more concerned of being out there in the dark with these animals that are out there. Anyway, we all got back, and we're still missing 2 guys. And it's like well after dark. We're thinking they may be lost. Like they may be lost.
And we were worried about them because, you know, they were part of the group that went fishing. You know, right. We already had the bear that got into the four-wheelers there, and the other 2 that still aren't back, they were part of the fishing group, you know. Right. So we were a little bit concerned about them. We thought, well, we probably better go look for them.
And so we decided to start getting we were like, hey, let's go ahead and eat. So we went ahead and ate without them. And then we were like, let's get our stuff on and let's go out there and see if we can find them. So we got ready, and we're like, okay, well, we'll start making our way out to the four-wheeler. We walk out to the four-wheeler, and one guy walked out a little earlier than all the rest of us did. And we walk out to the four-wheelers, and he's got a whole entire bottle of scent spray just dousing this thing, just the whole entire four-wheeler. And it's just dripping with scent spray. I mean, you could smell acres for like a mile away. I mean, it was just.
And he used the entire 16 or 20 ounce bottle on that four-wheeler, you know.
And what's funny is that, you know, we get on these four-wheelers and take off, and those 2 guys are up at the gate because the only place you had cell service, and they were calling back home to see what was going on. But, man, it was just funny because you just think, like, we're flatland Oklahoma people up there in the mountains doing this hunting and terrified of bears or whatever is going to get us out there. Just seeing him out there just dousing this four-wheeler is just, I'll never forget it. Gosh dang, it's so funny.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I remember, you know, one of the stories that I have is when it was us 3 that went up, and it was our first backpacking trip. And, you know, of course, you guys heard a little bit of it where we walked basically 14 miles in one day, and up the mountain and back down the mountain. And next morning we got up and we went down a different trail, and I think it was about 3 or 4 miles. And then we went up in this cove, and we got up there right before dark, and somehow, and this is way before Onyx, and somehow I had service on my phone, and didn't know where water was. And I was like, well, hell, shows a pond right up here, you know. We said, well, let's go. And Dylan had a 3-gallon, remember he had a 3-gallon collapsible deal. And we go up there to this pond, and it's like a mile away, uphill. We get up to this pond, there ain't nothing but bear tracks around it. And so Dylan and Nick were out there purifying their water, and I don't know, it took like 3 hours, it felt like, to do 3 gallons. And anyway,
because the filter kept getting clogged up. That's how nasty this pond is.
It was like a wallow.
Yeah.
You know. And we finally get back that night, and I sleep really good, and we woke up to that bugling bull, and we just about had him brought straight into camp, and he was finished with us, and we didn't know what we were doing at all. And we kind of got back to camp, which we left. I think we walked like 20 yards away from camp, tried to shoot this bull that we thought he was just coming straight into our camp. He almost came right to us, and we kind of gathered our stuff. Hell, wasn't even full clothed. I don't believe it.
No, because I remember.
I was pouring your water. I was pouring your water, and all of a sudden he bugles, and I look up.
And we both look up, and you're still pouring it, and it's just going around the ground.
But anyway, we had a good encounter, and nothing happened. And we kind of gathered up back at camp and talked about it just for a minute. And I'm like, Dylan, where you want to go? He's like, I want to go this way. So we're like, okay. So we walked that way. We walked that way 20 yards, and there's a beautiful running little creek. Do you remember the creek that was right there? And we walked a mile and a half up and got it out of a muddy wallow.
Right behind
and it was 20 yards from our camp the next morning. And we called that creek Dipshit Creek, because that's what we all felt like.
That's what we felt like.
You know?
It was a nice little creek right there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of funny stories from that trip. Probably one recent one, it was a kind of a scary, there's some scary moments in it, but it was funny when it was all said and done. But we were bear hunting last year. Me and my cousin Brian, we had been hunting, and it started to get pretty nasty, and weather started to change quite a bit. And but we were starting to get into the bears, kind of figured out, found the signs, spotted some bears, and this guy had told us, hey, you know, I know where a bear den is. And so I'm like, hey, that's a good sign right there. Let's go try to find it. Yeah. So we go try to find this bear den, and we're a little ways from the truck. I mean, it's quite a drive in there, and like I said, the roads it was snowing and everything, and then we had a little walk to get back in there, and went look for this bear den, found a dead mule deer carcass and a bear by the bear den, and that carcass, you know, had been found with a bear. I mean, there's just bear crap everywhere. I mean, just in this thick oak brush you couldn't see from, I mean, me to you. And he had set his backpack down, and we were just kind of scoping it out, just trying to figure out what we're doing, you know, like, hey, this is a good spot, but how do we hunt this carcass? You can't see it. And so we get out of there. I can't remember what we did, but it was after dark. We got back to the truck, and he starts looking for his keys, and you know, he starts kind of doing this. And I'm like, hopefully he knows where his keys are, you know. And then he's like, man, so where are my keys? And so we looked everywhere around the truck. I mean, we tried everything. And after about an hour of just contemplating what to do, because we didn't have service or nothing, somebody would have to come get us. He's like, you know, I think I set my bag down by that bear carcass, and I opened a zipper. I wonder if my keys fell out. So it's late. And by this time I'm like, man, I hope they realize, you know, that it's late and they come look for us, because we ain't getting out of here, because we ain't going to find those keys. We go all the way down there. I'm like, man, this is not a great idea, you know. But we needed those keys, so we hike all the way back down to that carcass, and we are looking all over for those keys. I mean, that carcass is right there. I mean, you can't see nothing. My flashlight went out. His is going dim. I'm thinking this is
not a very good feeling.
This is not a good. If it would have been grizzly country, I mean, it would have been.
Them keys would have stayed up there.
Yeah, but still, just I mean, even know that there's fresh. I mean, there's bears around, and they're here. But we looked all around. I mean, scrummaging around all over the place, and it is late. And finally, what was it? Oh, I was like, you know, let's just go back to the UTV and let's pull everything out of your pack and look again. Well, he starts pulling his stuff out of the UTV, and his keys are in his pack the whole time. This is like 6 hours later. We finally get back, and
you probably walked in, they're probably like, where in the world are y'all
they were loading up to come find us because
really?
It was late, real late, and but it was a little nerve wracking there.
Of course,
but it was one of those deals where, you know, it's a funny story that wasn't funny at the time, but.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of stories like that when you go to the mountains. I mean, stuff that doesn't even involve, you know,
hunting really. I mean,
so, but anyways, y'all have anything else? Y'all?
No,
we're an hour in here. So
yeah, I think
we could probably talk for another 3 hours.
We could talk for longer than that.
Maybe for another.
We all have full-time jobs. So I got to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
And I'm sure we'll have some more stories when we get back from this next trip. So, but.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, y'all, thanks for joining us, and until next time, we'll talk to you later.